Hello and welcome to session 4 of the Dawnbreakers. We've got an exciting one today. Going to give you a quick recap as to what happened in session 3. Remember, we had Sayyid Ibrahim Ghazvini, who was against Sheikh Ahmad and Sayyid Kazim. Sheikh Ahmad has now passed away. Sayyid Kazim is in charge of the ranks. Sayyid Kazim comes up with a plan to get the support of 2 ecclesiastical giants from both Isfahan and Mashhad. He says that he wants this help. Mirza Mohita Kermani, the tall, lean, thin guy, puts his hand up and says, "Yes, I will do it." Sayyid Kazim refuses and says, "Beware of touching the lion's tail." Next, Mullah Husayn puts his hand up and says he's willing to do it. Sayyid Kazim smiles. He tells him that he needs to go from Karbala, where they're currently situated, to Isfahan. And in Isfahan, he will meet Haji Sayyid Muhammad Baghir, speak to him. From there, he must go to Mashhad and talk to Mirza Askari. Mullah Husayn joyously springs to his feet and says he's going to do this. He goes out and finds Haji Sayyid Muhammad Baghir engaged in talking to his disciples, wearing no shoes and his shirt without buttons. He interrupts and says, "I have a message for you." Some people find this very disrespectful, the disciples, and they try to shut down Mullah Husayn. Mullah Husayn speaks with such eloquence that Haji Sayyid Muhammad Baghir says, "No, I want to listen." The message is shared. Lo and behold, Haji Sayyid Muhammad Baghir gives his approval. He writes a letter and says, "I'm in." They find out that Mullah Husayn is sleeping in a madrasah, this little small school, on a mat with nothing on top of him. They try and give him 100 tomans for his effort. He absolutely refuses and says the fact that you listened is what important. From Isfahan, he then goes to Mashhad to speak to Mirza Askari. Lo and behold, he wins the support of Mirza Askari as well. A letter is sent back in Karbala to Sayyid Kazim, informing him of this news. Sayyid Kazim is so overjoyed, he then reads out the letter to the multitude of people around him. He also reads out the letter that Sayyid Kazim has written back to Mullah Husayn. And from this letter, we can tell that Sayyid Kazim and Mullah Husayn are not going to meet again. Sayyid Kazim then starts giving signs of the promised one to come, saying he's going to be young, noble, with innate knowledge. Some people start thinking it's Sayyid Kazim himself. Mullah Mehdi Khouy actually goes so far as making this statement public and tells everyone. Sayyid Kazim was not happy and says that his knowledge is but a drop in the ocean compared to that of him who will come. Sheikh Hassan al-Junusi is also perplexed. He doesn't know whether Sayyid Kazim or Mullah Husayn is the promised one, and he wants to pray to see if it is Sayyid Kazim. One night, in his sleep at 3 a.m, Mullah Nawruz comes to the door, the attendant of Sayyid Kazim. He walks with him to Sayyid Kazim's house in silence. Sayyid Kazim is there, dressed in his abba, and they just walk to the house of somebody else, this youth. As they get there, they're invited in. No words are exchanged. They sit down. Then a drink is given in a silver cup. A drink of pure beverage their Lord shall give them. A quote from the Quran is said and given to Sayyid Kazim. Sheikh Hassan al-Junusi sees this and is convinced that Sayyid Kazim is not going to drink, because in Islam you can't drink from a silver cup. Sayyid Kazim takes the cup and drinks it. Sheikh Hassan al-Junusi is surprised by this, but he also takes from the silver cup and drinks, seeing as his master did. We know that this signifies a break from the laws of Islam, and this is what was taking place. The next time that Sheikh Hassan al-Junusi sees this character was in one of the classes of Sayyid Kazim. And Sayyid Kazim's talking, and all of a sudden, he starts explaining about the signs, and he says, "Look, it will be as clear, the person who comes, as this ray of light that comes through the window and lands on that lap." Of course, that was pointing to the same youth. The next time Sheikh Hassan al-Junusi sees this youth is at the shrine of Imam Hussain, and he's praying, "Oh God, my beloved, my heart's desire." Whilst he says this prayer, tears rain down his eyes. Everyone in the vicinity starts crying as well. So powerful a movement. Sheikh Hassan al-Junusi then realizes that this youth has moved down towards Shiraz. His heart was wedded to his, is what he says. Later on, he hears of this call from the youth of Shiraz claiming to be the Ghaem. Sheikh Hassan al-Junusi later realizes that there's a call from a youth in Shiraz and recognizes that to be the same youth he saw. He then goes and follows him and ends up becoming the amanuensis, the secretary of the Bab in Marku. Whilst in Marku for 9 months, the Bab writes a commentary on the Quran every month. He comes up with 9 commentaries. Apparently, we only have 2 of these, which are in Haifa according to the research department. One day, the Bab asked Sheikh Hassan al-Junusi, "What do you think is more impressive, this commentary on the Quran or the commentary that I've written on the Surah of Joseph?" Sheikh Hassan al-Junusi says that the Surah of Joseph is more impressive. The Bab smiles and says, "You're not aware with what I've written yet. You don't quite understand what this is." After this, the Bab says he would go and lend his assistance to Qaddus in the fort of Sheikh Tabasi, one of the 3 big battles that's going to take place, but he's imprisoned. He then tells Sheikh Hassan al-Junusi, "You must go down and head towards Karbala and wait to meet the promised one." He goes to Karbala, he waits, and there, to not raise suspicion, he decides to get married. He waits for a couple of years, where in the vicinity of the Imam Husayn shrine, he sees Baha'u'llah. He recognizes him just from the way he is. They speak, they walk through the bazaars, and Sheikh Hassan al-Janusi remembers this promise that he was told, that he would indeed, in Karbala, meet this great one. We are now ready, ladies and gentlemen, to continue with our next installment of the Dawnbreakers.
I now return after this digression to my theme. I had been referring to the eagerness with which Sayyid Kazim had determined to rend asunder those veils which intervened between the people of his day and the recognition of the promised manifestation. In the introductory pages of his works, entitled Sharh Ghasede and Sharh Khutbeh, he, in veiled language, alludes to the blessed name of Baha'u'llah. In a booklet, the last he wrote, he explicitly mentions the name of the Bab by his reference to the term Zikrullah Azam. In it, he writes, addressing this noble zikr, this mighty voice of God, I say, I am apprehensive of the people, lest they harm you. I am apprehensive of my own self, lest I too may hurt you. I fear you, I tremble at your authority. I dread the age in which you live. Were I to treasure you as the apple of my eye, until the day of resurrection, I would not sufficiently have proved my devotion to you. How grievously Sayyid Kazim suffered at the hands of the people of wickedness. What harm that villainous generation inflicted upon him. For years he suffered silently, and endured with heroic patience all the indignities, the calumnies, the denunciations that were heaped upon him. He was destined, however, to witness, during the last years of his life, how the avenging hand of God destroyed with utter destruction those that opposed, vilified, and plotted against him. In those days, the followers of Sayyid Ibrahim, that notorious enemy of Sayyid Kazim, banded themselves together for the purpose of stirring up sedition and mischief and endangering the life of their formidable adversary. By every means at their disposal, they sought to poison the minds of his admirers and friends, to undermine his authority and to discredit his name. No voice was raised in protest against the agitation that was being sedulously prepared by that ungodly and treacherous people, each of whom professed to be the exponent of true learning and the repository of the mysteries of the faith of God. No one sought to warn or awaken them. They gathered such force and kindled such strife that they succeeded in evicting from Karbala in a disgraceful manner the representative official of the Ottoman government, and appropriated for their own sordid aims whatever revenues accrued to them. Their menacing attitude aroused the central government at Constantinople, which dispatched a military official to the scene of agitation, with full instructions to quench the fires of mischief. With the force at his command, that official besieged the city, and dispatched a communication to Sayyid Kazim in which he entreated him to pacify the minds of the excited populace. He appealed to him to counsel moderation to its inhabitants, to induce them to relax their stubbornness, and to surrender voluntarily to his rule. Were they to heed his counsels, he promised that he would undertake to ensure their safety and protection, would proclaim a general amnesty, and would strive to promote their welfare. If they refused, however, to submit, he warned them that their lives would be in danger, that a great calamity would surely befall them.
Thank you very much, Sina. We are in Karbala. And what's happening is you have this Sayyid Ibrahim Ghazvini. And he has a lot of issues with Sayyid Kazim. He has a lot of issues with the Shaykhis in general, in fact. Because a lot of people are listening to the Shaykhis, and there seems to be this kind of power struggle, not as far as the Shaykhis are concerned, or Shaykh Ahmad was concerned. He wasn't after power. But these other mullahs and these other clerics who were trying to run things and be the powerful ones in charge, and they really start to try and attack Sayyid Kazim now. So they really want to bring so much problems to him. But not only to Sayyid Kazim, also to the governor. So the official Ottoman representative was actually kicked out of Karbala. So in Karbala, there's now a lot of fight going on where these people have ousted him, and there's a lot of corruption and things going on. So much so that the forces that be come and they besiege Karbala. But the one person they contact, because of his conduct and the rest of it, is Sayyid Kazim. And they say to Sayyid Kazim, please, Sayyid Kazim, try and speak to these people, try and bring them under control, or there's going to be repercussions.
Upon the receipt of this formal communication, Sayyid Kazim summoned to his presence the chief instigators of the movement, and with the utmost wisdom and affection, exhorted them to cease their agitation and surrender their arms. He spoke with such persuasive eloquence, such sincerity and detachment, that their hearts were softened and their resistance was subdued. They solemnly undertook to throw open, the next morning, the gates of the citadel and to present themselves in the company of Sayyid Kazim to the officer in command of the besieging forces. It was agreed that the Sayyid would intervene in their behalf and secure for them whatever would ensure their tranquility and welfare. No sooner had they left the presence of the Sayyid than the ulamas, the chief instigators of the rebellion, unanimously arose to frustrate this plan. Fully aware that such intervention on the part of the Sayyid, who had already excited their envy, would serve to enhance his prestige and consolidate his authority, they determined to persuade a number among the foolish and excitable elements of the population to sally forth at night and attack the forces of the enemy. They assured them of victory on the strength of a dream in which one of their members had seen Abbas, who had charged him to incite his followers to wage holy war against the besiegers and had given him the promise of ultimate success. Deluded by this vain promise, they rejected the advice tendered by that wise and judicious counselor and arose to execute the designs of their foolish leaders. Sayyid Kazim, who was well aware of the evil influence that actuated that revolt, addressed a detailed and faithful report on the situation to the Turkish commander, who again wrote to Sayyid Kazim and reiterated his appeal for a peaceful settlement of the issue. He, moreover, declared that at a given time he would force the gates of the citadel and would regard the home of the Sayyid as the only place of refuge for a defeated enemy. This declaration the Sayyid caused to be spread throughout the city. It served only to excite the derision and contempt of the population. When informed of the reception accorded to that declaration, the Sayyid remarked, "Verily, that with which they are threatened is for the morning. Is not the morning near?" At daybreak, the appointed hour, the forces of the enemy bombarded the ramparts of the citadel, demolished its walls, entered the city, and pillaged and massacred a considerable number of its population. Many fled in consternation to the courtyard of the shrine of Imam Husayn. Others sought refuge in the sanctuary of Abbas. Those who loved and honored Sayyid Kazim betook themselves to his home. So great was the crowd that hastened to the shelter of his residence that it was found necessary to appropriate a number of the adjoining houses in order to accommodate the multitude of refugees who pressed at his doors. So vast and excited was the concourse that thronged his house, that when once the tumult had subsided, it was certain that no less than 22 persons had been trampled to death.
The authorities had spoken to Sayyid Kazim. They said, calm things down, do what you can. Sayyid Kazim spoke to everyone, basically, and said, guys, stay calm, let's really bring things down. Let's remember the beautiful, pervasive spirit of Islam. And we are Muslims, and we're gonna carry that on, and we're gonna conduct ourselves in those ways. Sayyid Ibrahim Ghazvini, however, had different plans. He decides in his genius that he's going to call a meeting, and he goes into the streets and he says to people, guys, there's some news. I'm going to tell you what happened last night. And people are like, well, what happened? Are kebabs half price? No, something more important than this. They say, we had a dream with the brother of Imam Husayn. Now, bear in mind, we're in Karbala. In Karbala, Imam Husayn's buried, okay, as is his brother. And they say, we had a dream of his brother, and the brother says that we should incite holy war. We should actually go after these people. And he promises us 100% of ultimate victory, ultimate success we will have. We should fight these people. And trust me, you might think I'm a bit of a dodgy guy, all right? Yes, I'm Ibrahim Ghazvini, and I know I've got a couple of traits that are a bit dodgy, but I had the dream with Abbas, and Abbas told me, I think we should be loving that. Abbas said, let's do it. So these people decide to actually go along with it, and then they carry on revolting and causing all sorts of problems. Eventually, the powers that be were not going to take this anymore. So they then contact Sayyid Kazim, and they said, we know you tried. We know Sayyid Ibrahim Ghazvini has decided to do this also to thwart your efforts, because Sayyid Ibrahim Ghazvini thought if Sayyid Kazim was successful, he would gain more power. So they said, this is what we're going to do. Anybody who's in your house, Sayyid Kazim, we will leave alone. But otherwise, we're coming in, and people are going to get killed. We are going to put the city to rights. We're going to put things right now. So anyone who's in your house will be fine. Sayyid Kazim had so many people that followed him and believed him and respected him, that what they had to do is his house was so full that they had to get adjoining houses, commandeer them to basically be part of Sayyid Kazim's house. So they said, the neighbors to the left, the neighbors to the right, that's all part of my house as well. In that complete rush, it says that 22 people had trampled to death. Things were about to go down. Craziness was happening.
Sorry, I just wanted to share a thought that I had reading this passage. Was that it's interesting how, so they found refuge in the shrine of Hussein and Abbas. Well, I don't know what happened there, but then also they found refuge the home of Sayyid Kazim. But let us assume that perhaps because the Ottoman had said that they would only spare those who were at the house of Sayyid Kazim, let us assume that those who had found shelter in those holy shrines were not spared from the massacres. It's a beautiful metaphor of how, when the time has come for the new manifestation, like there is no other shelter than that the true faith. And that even those places that were held sacred and holy in past dispensations, they are, because the spirit is not there anymore, you can't find refuge there. They are not going to be able to protect you anymore. I don't know if it's too far, but I find it a nice analogy, perhaps.
It's a very interesting point. The shrine of Imam Hussein, which would have previously been a sanctuary, they went in there and they slaughtered people. So they didn't care about that. But for Sayyid Kazim, they had this ultimate respect.
I would like, with great humility, not only to respect the last speaker, but just add a point. You know, it's not that she said something extreme, because we know that in the Baha'i dispensation, the shrine of Imam Hussein will be still considered very respected. It will be a place of pilgrimage in the future. Baha'u'llah revealed a very long 12 pages of tablet of visitation from the Imam Hussein. And of course, he visited it himself. No, it's not just that the fact that there will be a complete loss of sacredness, sacred space from the past, because we respect Mecca and Medina, and basically we are an inheritor of the whole progressive revelation. The point that the lady made, though, is very special in the sense that Sayyid Ibrahim Ghazvini, and just about 20 years before him, there's a tendency within Shia Islam. You pointed it out beautifully, Dave, very nicely, that there was first a division between Sunni Islam and Shia Islam, fundamentally the 12er branch, but by the time of the 17th or 18th century, it had divided itself into what is called Usuli and Akhbari. The Usulis felt that their prestige, their power base should not be encroached. That's why Iran waged a war against Russia, Imperial Russia. 2 big wars in the beginning of the 19th century. Both of them resulted in defeat, very much, and we lost tons and tons of territory. And similarly now in the Iraq area, in the Mesopotamia, where Sayyid Kazim was, they were again standing vis-a-vis the Ottomans, that the Ottomans should be repelled back. And again, you see that that has resulted in massacre. So those two tendencies, one tendency to somehow accommodate modernity, accommodate the future, is identified, as we say, with the constructive proposal of the Bab Sayyid Kazim, and subsequently Baha'u'llah and his covenant. The one that says, no, we will not engage, we will revert back to our citadel, well, there you have it, Dave. I won't say anymore. The lady had a point, but not to the starkness that the Imam Hussein, God forbid, lost its spirituality. It's just that it's the beginning of a transition to modernity.
Thank you very much, Dr. Fernand Perez. Appreciate that. We know later on, actually, when the Bab goes up to Qom, they ask him if he wants to go into the Haram al-Masumeh, one of these holy shrines, and he refuses to, and says that he won't go into the city because of the way that the people are acting. But he does make that point that actually that's not to take away from the sanctity of the Haram al-Masumeh. And again, Islam is our faith. It's one that we love and we've grown out of, in a sense. So yeah, thank you very much, Dr. Thank you. Next reader, please.
What consternation seized the residents and visitors of the holy city? With what severity did the victors treat their terrified enemy? With what audacity they ignored those sacred rights and prerogatives with which the piety of countless Muslim pilgrims had invested the holy sites of Karbala. They refused to recognize alike the shrine of the Imam Husayn and the sacred mausoleum of Abbas as inviolable sanctuaries for the thousands who fled before the avenging wrath of an alien people. The hallowed precincts of both these shrines ran with the blood of the victims. One place, and only one, could assert its right of sanctuary to the innocent and faithful among the population. That place was the residence of Sayyid Kazim. His house, with its dependencies, was regarded as being endowed with such sanctity as even the most hallowed shrine of Shia Islam had failed to retain. That strange manifestation of the avenging wrath of God was an object lesson to those who were inclined to belittle the station of that holy man. The memorable event happened on the 8th of Zulhijjah in the year 1258 AH. It is admittedly evident that in every age and dispensation, those whose mission it is either to proclaim the truth or to prepare the way for its acceptance have invariably been opposed by a number of powerful adversaries who challenged their authority and attempted to pervert their teachings. These have either by fraud or pretense, calumny or oppression, succeeded for a time in beguiling the uniformed and in misleading the feeble, desirous of maintaining their hold over the thoughts and consciences of men. They have, so long as the faith of God remained concealed, been able to enjoy the fruits of a fleeting and precarious ascendancy. No sooner was the faith proclaimed, however, than they found to their utter dismay the effects of their dark plottings pale before the dawning light of the new day of God. Before the fierce rays of that orb, all their machinations and evil deeds faded into nothingness and were soon a thing forgotten. Around Sayyid Kazim were likewise gathered a number of vain and ignoble people who feigned devotion and attachment to his person, who professed to be devout and pious, and who claimed to be the sole repositories of the mysteries enshrined in the utterances of Sheikh Ahmad and his successor. They occupied the seats of honor in the company of the assembled disciples of Sayyid Kazim. To them he addressed his discourse, and towards them he showed marked consideration and courtesy. And yet he often, in covert and subtle phrases, I alluded to their blindness, their vainglory, and utter inaptitude for the apprehension of the mysteries of divine utterance. Among his allusions were the following: none can comprehend my language except him who is begotten of me. Oftentimes he quoted this saying, I am spellbound by the vision, I am mute with wonder, and behold the world bereft of the power of hearing. I am powerless to divulge the mystery, and find the people incapable of bearing its weight. On another occasion he remarked, Many are those who claim to have attained union with the beloved, and yet that beloved refuses to acknowledge their claim. By the tears which he sheds for his loved one, can only the true lover be distinguished from the false. Many a time he observed, he who is destined to be made manifest after me is a pure lineage, of illustrious descent, of the seed of Fatima. He is of medium height and is free from bodily deficiency.
Sayyid Kazim is being attacked from all different angles. We've got Sayyid Ibrahim Ghazvini, who's trying to cause lots of problems for him. There's also people within the Shaykhi ranks who are trying to claim that they should be in charge as well. So it's all kind of raining down on him. Also, we hear him talk about how he wants to share the message of who it is, of the Promised One. Obviously, he realizes who the Promised One is, but he can't say anything. And he tries to drop all these different explanations and these little hints. And one of the things he does here, we see at the end, is he gives these little clues about the Bab. And one of them is he says that he's of medium height and is free from bodily deficiencies. These seem like very bizarre signs. If you were to come into a room with me and say, excuse me, who's the manager of this club? And I said, well, he's of medium height and is free from bodily deficiency. That's not really going to help you. Well, some nights it may do. But yeah, so it's kind of like, well, what is, what a bizarre sign. But actually what Sayyid Kazim's doing here, he has the foresight to know that after his passing, there are going to be certain people that are going to claim to be the ones in charge, to claim to be maybe a claim even greater. So of medium height, who do we know? Which character have we discussed that we know isn't of medium height? Someone who's very lean and incredibly tall, like a Sikh, as my grandma would say, like a kebab skewer, is none other than Mirza Mohita Kermani. You remember when Sayyid Kazim asked for someone to go to Isfahan and go to Mashhad to carry out these missions? Mirza Mohit's the one who put his hand up. He's going to be one of the people that's going to cause problems later. So Sayyid Kazim's ruling him out. Another one, this thing about being free from bodily deficiency, is none other than the one-eyed Haji Mirza Karim, a Kermani. So he's another one who I believe is later called the Antichrist of the Baha'i revelation. So he's another one. There's also a really large guy who was Gohar is his name, who's also going to come. So these little signs are being dropped. There are things to lead, and ultimately, like Godus did, or like somebody mentioned in a session yesterday, you can truly recognize the manifestations if you were to see with your spiritual eye. And it's this real, this inner heart, this love. It's not just the ecclesiastics. It's not the people that know the Quran inside out that will be able to define, oh yes, and sort of decipher from what's in the Quran and say, yes, it's this person. It's not an academic thing. It's something that the heart sees as well as the mind.
What does it mean here, he's begotten of me?
You remember in the first night of the 4 sessions, you described beautifully how in a dream Sheikh Ahmad received the benevolence, the bounty from the utterance of Imam Hassan, some incredible dream in which there was communication between prophetic figures of the past dispensation and Sheikh Ahmad. Now, in a similar vein, there is an idea within Shaykhism and also within early Babism that to recognize the truth, you have to be begotten of the truth. Basically, the mystical element. In other words, as you just said a few seconds ago, you don't acquire the earthly learnings that Sayyid Ibrahim Qazvini was so famous for, all the Shia ecclesiastical hierarchy, all Islamic and indeed Christian hierarchy. That acquisition, what you really need is to try to, as Jesus says, be born again, to be begotten again. Begetting is all to do with this idea of being rebirth in a new spiritual paradigm. So he's saying, none comprehends my language except he who is begotten of me. And the guys who were begotten of him were those disciples who sat in the front, not in the front row necessarily. They could have been in the back row, like Qudus was saying, and by correspondence, Tahiri. Now, Tahiri is not begotten of Sayyid Kazim. She's got her own father and mother. She's begotten of that spiritual insight which Sheikh Ahmad and Sayyid Kazim brought into the world. So in a sense, I could say, hopefully to get a smile from you, Dave, Dave is begotten of that spirit of inquiry. So Dave is, anyway, I won't say more.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Doctor. Thank you. Sheikh Abu Tarab as well, from what I believe this is the same Sheikh Abu Tarab when the Bab was slapped in the face in Shiraz, and his turban fell off, and there was the Imam Joma next to Hussein Khan, who was the governor. I believe this to be the same guy, the same Sheikh Abu Tarab. There's a bit of discussion as to whether or not they're like just two people with the same name, but I believe it's the same person that actually ordered the Bab's turban to be put back on.
I have heard Sheikh Abu Tarab recount the following. I, together with a number of the disciples of Sayyid Kazim, regarded the allusions to these deficiencies, from which the Sayyid declared the promised one to be free, as specifically directed towards 3 individuals amongst our fellow disciples. We even designated them by such appellations as indicated by their bodily defects. One of them was Haji Mirza Karim Khan, son of Ibrahim Khan Khajar Kermani, who was both one-eyed and sparsely bearded. Another was Mirza Hassan Gawar, an exceptionally corpulent man. The third was Mirza Mohit Shahriyar Kermani, who was extraordinarily lean and tall. We felt convinced that these were none other than those to whom the Sayyid constantly alluded as those vain and faithless people who would eventually reveal their real selves and betray their ingratitude and folly. As to Haji Mirza Karim Khan, who for years sat at the feet of Sayyid Kazim and acquired from him all his so-called learning, in the end he obtained leave from his master to settle in Kerman, and there engaged in the promotion of the interests of Islam and the dissemination of those traditions that clustered around the sacred memory of the Imams of the faith. I was present in the library of Sayyid Kazim when one day an attendant of Haji Mirza Karim Khan arrived holding a book in his hand, which he presented to the Sayyid on behalf of his master, requesting him to peruse it and to signify in his own handwriting his approval of its contents. The Sayyid read portions of that book and returned it to the attendant with this message: "Tell your master that he, better than anyone else, can estimate the value of his own book." The attendant had retired when the Sayyid, with sorrowful voice, remarked, "Accursed be he. For years he has been associated with me, and now that he intends to depart, his one aim after so many years of study and companionship is to diffuse through his book such heretical and atheistic doctrines as he now wishes me to endorse. He has covenanted with a number of self-seeking hypocrites with the view of establishing himself in Kerman, and in order to assume after my departure from this world the reins of undisputed leadership. How grievously he erred in his judgment. For the breeze of divine revelation wafted from the dayspring of guidance will assuredly quench his light and destroy his influence. The tree of his endeavor will eventually yield naught but the fruit of bitter disillusion and gnawing remorse. Verily I say, you shall behold this with your own eyes. My prayer for you is that you may be protected from the mischievous influence which he, the Antichrist of the promised revelation, will in future exercise. He bade me conceal this prediction until the day of resurrection, the day when the hand of omnipotence will have disclosed the secrets which are now hidden within the breasts of men. On that day, he exhorted me, arise with unswerving purpose and determination for the triumph of the faith of God. Publish far and wide all that you have heard and witnessed. This same Sheikh Abu Tarab, who in the early days of the dispensation, proclaimed by the Bab, thought it wiser and better not to identify himself with his cause, cherished in his heart the fondest love for the revealed manifestation, and in his faith remained firm and immovable as a rock. Eventually that smoldering fire blazed forth in his soul and was responsible for such behavior on his part as to cause him to suffer imprisonment in Tehran, in the same dungeon within which Baha'u'llah was confined. He remained steadfast to the very end and crowned a life of loving sacrifice with the glory of martyrdom.
Whilst in the library, he sees that actually Karim Khan comes along, gets one of his attendants to go inside and give this book to Sayyid Kazim. And he says to Sayyid Kazim, can you please have a quick glance through this and just sign that you approve everything that I've put inside it? Sayyid Kazim absolutely pretty much disgusted by what this is. He realizes that actually Karim Khan's just trying to get power, or he's just trying to be mischievous and the rest of it. And he says, you don't need me to read this book. He said to the attendant, tell your master that he can evaluate this book himself. And it says, a curse he's been of me. He's been coming to all of my classes and he still doesn't really know what's going on. Later on, we know that Sheikh Abu Tarab in the early days didn't declare himself as a Babi, but he ends up being in the Siyah child of Baha'u'llah. He goes through a whole bunch of things in true close.
As the days of Sayyid Kazim drew to a close, he, whenever he met his disciples, whether in private converse or public discourse, exhorted them, saying, O my beloved companions, beware, beware, lest after me the world's fleeting vanities beguile you. Beware lest you wax haughty and forgetful of God. It is incumbent upon you to renounce all comforts, all earthly possessions and kindred, in your quest of him who is the desire of your hearts and of mine. Scatter far and wide, detach yourself from all earthly things, and humbly and prayerfully beseech your Lord to sustain and guide you. Never relax in your determination to seek and find him, who is concealed behind the veils of glory. Persevere till the time when he, who is your true guide and master, will graciously aid you and enable you to recognize him. Be firm till the day when he will choose you as the companions and heroic supporters the promised by him. Well is it with every one of you who will quaff the cup of martyrdom in his path. Those of you whom God in his wisdom will persevere and keep to witness the setting of the star of divine guidance, the harbinger of the sun of divine revelation, must needs be patient, must remain assured and steadfast. Such one amongst you must neither falter nor feel dismayed. For soon after the trumpet blast which is to smite the earth with extermination and death, there shall be sounded yet another call, at which all things will be quickened and revived. Then will the meaning of these sacred verses be revealed. And there was a blast in the trumpet, and all who are in the heavens and all who are on the earth expired, save those whom God permitted to live. Then there sounded another blast, and lo, arising they gazed around them, and the earth shone the light of their Lord, and the book was set, and the prophets were brought up, and the witnesses, and the judgment was given between them with equity, and none was wronged. Verily I say, after the Qayyum, the Qayyum will be made manifest. But when the star of the former is set, the sun of the beauty of Husayn will rise and illuminate the whole world. Then will be unfolded in all its glory the mystery and the secret spoken of by Shaykh Ahmad, who has said, the mystery of this cause must needs be made manifest, and the secret of this message must needs be divulged. To have attained unto that day of days is to have attained unto the crown and glory of past generations. And one goodly deed performed in that age is equal to the pious worship of countless centuries. How often has that venerable soul Shaykh Ahmad recited those verses in the Quran already referred to? What stress he laid upon the significance, as foreshadowing the advent of those twin revelations, which are to be followed in rapid succession, and each of which is destined to suffuse the world with all its glory. How many times did he explain, well is it with him who will recognize the significance and behold the splendor? How often, addressing me, did he remark, neither of us shall live to gaze upon their effulgent glory, when many of the faithful among your disciples shall witness a day which we, alas, can never hope to behold. O my beloved companions, how great, how very great is the cause, how exalted the station to which I summon you, how great the mission for which I have trained and prepared you. Gird up the loins of endeavour and fix your gaze upon his promise. I pray to God to graciously assist you to weather the storms of tests and trials which must needs beset you, to enable you to emerge unscathed and triumphant from their midst and to lead you to your high destiny.
So Sayyid Kazim now is laying it down. He is really bringing this out. He's saying everything we've been talking about, everything Sheikh Ahmad has been talking about is on the cusp, people. You need to search for it. You need to search with absolute desire and might everywhere, high and low, wherever you can. You need to go out and search. He also talks about the fact that the star of divine guidance, you will see, if you end up being true and you end up finding him, and he's talking about the Bab, the star of divine guidance, you will see him come and you will see him go as well, the martyr of the Bab. He then talks about the son of divine revelation as well, referring to Baha'u'llah. He said, you will see him come as well. He says, there will be tests, and well is it with you who die as a martyr for him. But what you need to do is you need to get out there, you need to start looking, and you need to really, with true heart, try and search. It's getting exciting. Everything that we're talking about, everything that they've been talking about is going to be happening soon.
That verse that is quoted here is the most frequent verse quoted in the Baha'i and Revelation in the last 160 years. And it is something that I bet, like a will and testament, that you guys also really try and memorize it. It's a verse from the Holy Quran, chapter 39, verse 69, the one that talks about 2 trumpet blasts. Because there is 2 billion Muslims in the world, and there's roughly 6 million Baha'is, and we are always trying to relate our discussion with them. They ask, what is the fundamental reference to the Baha'i revelation? And why do you have them so close together? The answer, dearest Dave, Kayani, is chapter 39, verse 69. What was that verse? That verse said that there is first a big, mighty trumpet blast, such astounding severity that virtually everybody will die or expire. That, according to Abdul Baha in some answered questions, according to Baha'u'llah in innumerable writings, and according to that first trumpet blast equals the Baha'i revelation. That virtually everyone will expire, this refers to the holocausts that you yourself will teach us subsequently that occurred, 10,000 Baha'is, and so much that happened in Tabarsi, Neiris, and Zanjo. So that virtually was a mega bloodbath. Then the Quranic verse says there'll be a second trumpet blast. Now, Baha'u'llah's revelation is the second trumpet blast. And then what Sayyid Kazim and Sheikh Ahmad did, something numerologically clever, very clever. They did, after the Qa'im, the Qayyum. Now, Qa'im means standing, upright. Qayyum means what? Standing upright on its own. The only thing is that in Abjad, the difference between Qa'im and Qayyum is 9. So 9-year interval between the Qayyum, the self-subsisting Lord who rises, that is Baha'u'llah, and the Qa'im, who's of course the Sayyid above, 9. So they gave that clue. And then it says after the second trumpet blast, all the peoples will come and all the prophets. So we present this to our Muslim friends. When they say all the prophets, Dave, that includes the seal of the prophets. So in other words, it's a revelation post-seal of the prophets. The cycle of prophecy will be sealed and the cycle of fulfillment will commence. Thank you very much for this 1 minute permission. Thank you.
Thank you, Khaza. Dropping knowledge from a great height, as always. Every year in the month of Zil-Qa'dah, the Sayyid would proceed from Karbala to Kazimain in order to visit the shrines of the Imams. He would return to Karbala in time to visit on the day of Arafah the shrine of the Imam Husayn. In that year, the last day of his life, he, faithful to his custom, departed from Karbala in the first days of the month of Zil-Qa'dah in the year 1259 AH, accompanied by a number of his companions and friends. On the 4th day of that month, he arrived at the Masjid al-Barasa, situated on the highway between Baghdad and Kazimain, in time to offer up his noonday prayer. He bade the Muazzidin summon the faithful to gather and pray. Standing beneath the shade of a palm tree which faced the masjid, he joined the congregation, and just concluded his devotions when an Arab suddenly appeared, approached the Sayyid, and embraced him. 3 days ago, he said, I was shepherding my flock in this adjoining pasture when sleep suddenly fell upon me. In my dream, I saw Muhammad, the apostle of God, who addressed me in these words, Give ear, O shepherd, to my words, and treasure them within your heart, for these words of mine are the trust of God, which I commit to you for your keeping. For these words of mine are the trust of God, which I commit to your keeping. If you be faithful to them, great will be your reward. If you neglect them, grievous retribution will befall you. Hear me. This is the trust with which I charge you. Stay within the precincts of the Masjid al-Barasa. On the 3rd day after this dream, a sign of my house, Sayyid Kazim by name, will, accompanied by his friends and companions, alight at the hour of noon, beneath the shadow of the palm in the vicinity of the masjid. There he will offer his prayer. As soon as your eyes fall upon him, seek his presence and convey to him my loving greetings. tell him from me, rejoice, for the hour of your departure is at hand, when you shall have performed your visits to Kazimain and shall have returned to Karbala. There, 3 days after your return, on the day of Arafah, soon after, he who is the truth shall be made manifest. Then shall the world be illumined by the light of his face. A smile wreathed the countenance of Sayyid Kazim upon the completion of the description of the dream related by that shepherd. He said, of the truth of the dream which you have dreamt, there is no doubt. His companions were sorely grieved. Turning to them, he said, is not your love for me, for the sake of that true one whose advent we all await? Would you not wish me to die that this promised one may be revealed? This episode, in its entirety, has been related to me by no less than 10 persons, all of whom were present on that occasion, and who testified to its accuracy. And yet many of those who witnessed with their own eyes such marvelous signs have rejected the truth and repudiated his message. So here we have Sayyid Kazim, and he's traveling and he's going between these two different mosques, and he's going from Karbala to Kazimain, and he stops at the Masjid Barasa. So he's there and he's waiting, and he's below a palm tree, and he's about to have the prayer said, and along comes a bunch of goats and sheep, and there's an Arab shepherd who's coming along, and he says, wait, I have news for you. And everyone's thinking, well, what's the news? What's going to happen? Is there a discount on sheep? Who knows what's going to happen here? And he says, I had a dream. He said, while I was out in the fields, I ended up falling asleep, and I have this dream where the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, has come to me. He told me to wait here in this vicinity and to deliver you this message. What is this message? The message is that when he is going to return back to Karbala, he's going to be dead within 3 days. This is Sayyid Kazim. He's telling him that you are going to die in 3 days. People gasp, they're shocked. They're like, no, is this true? Is this not? Sayyid Kazim says, there is no doubt that this is true. And people look so sad. Their leader, the one that they love, Sayyid Kazim, is going to be dead in 3 days once I get back to Karbala. If it was me, I would potentially not go back to Karbala. I'd be like, right, no more Karbala for me. Let's go to London. But no, he was excited to get back to Karbala. And he says, why are you sad? Why are you sad? Is your love for me not for the sake of one whose advent we await? Is it not for the coming of the Ga'em that we're all in this, that we're excited? I'm just a mere pawn in this game. Don't worry, I had to die. Remember, Sheikh Ahmad had said this, that both he and I had to die before the Bab, before the Ga'em would come. And only by virtue of the fact that I'm going to die, this is going to happen. That this will happen, this moment that we're all waiting for is going to take place.
Could I have a question, please, Dave?
Yes.
Is the Ga'em the same as what the Muslim people talk about as the Mahdi?
Correct. Yes.
Okay, so that's the 12th Imam.
Very good, yes. So the Shias, yes, refer to him as the Ga'em.
This strange event was noised abroad. It brought sadness to the heart of the true lovers of Sayyid Kazim. To these he, with infinite tenderness and joy, addressed words of cheer and comfort. He calmed their troubled hearts, fortified their faith, and inflamed their zeal. With dignity and calm, he completed his pilgrimage and returned to Karbala. The very day of his arrival, he fell ill and was confined to his bed. His enemies spread the rumor that he had been poisoned by the governor of Baghdad. This was sheer calumny and downright falsehood, inasmuch as the governor himself had placed his unqualified confidence in Sayyid Kazim and had always regarded him as a highly talented leader, endowed with keen perception and possessed of irreproachable character. On the day of Arafah, in the year 1259 AH, at the ripe age of 60, Sayyid Kazim, in accordance with the vision of that lowly shepherd, bade farewell to this world, leaving behind him a band of earnest and devoted disciples, who, purged of all worldly desire, set out in quest of their promised beloved. His sacred remains were interred within the precincts of the shrine of the Imam Husayn. His passing raised a tumult in Karbala similar to the agitation that seized its people the preceding year, on the eve of the day of Arafah, when the victorious enemy forced the gates of the citadel and massacred a considerable number of its besieged inhabitants. A year before, on that day, his house had been the one haven of peace and security for the bereaved and homeless, whereas now it had become a house of sorrow where those whom he had befriended and succored bewailed his passing and mourned his loss.
That's the end of that chapter. So, of course, he does go back, and we know that there's these troublemakers that are still there who basically say, no, the reason why he's died was because the governor decided to kill him, basically. basically, that the governor poisoned him. And they're trying to constantly throw shade on Sayyid Kazim. They were constantly trying to cause problems for Sayyid Kazim, but Sayyid Kazim did absolutely this. He ended up passing away, and this is roughly a year after the first troubles that we had there. We're going to start unless there's any pressing questions, we're going to start the declaration of the Barb's mission, a chapter that most of us will be more familiar with, I would imagine. But Anissa, whilst we've got you there to read, if you could please kick us off.
The death of Sayyid Kazim was the signal for renewed activity on the part of his enemies, a thirst for leadership, and emboldened by his removal and the consequent dismay of his followers, they reasserted their claims and prepared to realize their ambitions. For a time, fear and anxiety filled the hearts of Sayyid Kazim's faithful disciples, but with the return of Mullah Husayn Bushrui from the highly successful mission with which he had been entrusted by his teacher, their gloom was dispelled. It was on the first day of Muharram in the year 1260 AH that Mullah Husayn came back to Karbala. He cheered and strengthened the disconsolate disciples of his beloved chief, reminded them of his unfailing promise, and pleaded for unrelaxing vigilance and unremitting effort in their search for the concealed beloved. Living in the close neighborhood of the house the Sayyid had occupied, he, for 3 days, was engaged continually in receiving visits from a considerable number of mourners who hastened to convey to him, as the leading representative of the Sayyid's disciples, the expression of their distress and sorrow. He afterwards summoned a group of his most distinguished and trusted fellow disciples and inquired about the expressed wishes and the last exhortations of their departed leader. They told him that, repeatedly and emphatically, Sayyid Kazim had bidden them quit their homes, scatter far and wide, purge their hearts from every idle desire, and dedicate themselves to the quest of him to whose advent he had so often alluded. He told us, they said, that the object of our quest was now revealed. The veils that intervened between you and him are such as only you can remove by your devoted search. Nothing short of prayerful endeavor, of purity of motive, of singleness of mind will enable you to tear them asunder. Has not God revealed in his book, whoso maketh efforts for us, in our ways will we guide them? Why then, Mullah Husayn observed, have you chosen to tarry in Karbala? Why is it that you have not dispersed and arisen to carry out his earnest plea? We acknowledge our failure, was their reply. To your greatness we all bear witness. Such is our confidence in you that if you claim to be the promised one, we shall all readily and unquestionably submit. We herein pledge our loyalty and obedience to whatever you bid us perform. God forbid, exclaimed Mullah Husayn, far be it from his glory that I, who am but dust, should be compared to him who is the Lord of Lords. Had you been conversant with the tone and language of Sayyid Kazim, you never would have uttered such words. Your first obligation, as well as mine, is to arise and carry out, both in the spirit and in the letter, the dying message of our beloved chief. He arose instantly from his seat and went directly to Mirza Hasan Gauhar, Mirza Mohit, and other well-known figures among the disciples of Sayyid Kazim. To each and all he fearlessly delivered the parting message of his chief, emphasized the pressing character of their duty, and urged them to arise and fulfill it. To his plea, they returned evasive and unworthy answers. Our enemies, one of them remarked, are many and powerful. We must remain in this city and guard the vacant seat of our departed chief. Another observed, it is incumbent upon me to stay and care for the children whom the Sayyid has left behind. Mullah Husayn immediately recognized the futility of his efforts. Realizing the degree of their folly, their blindness, and ingratitude, he spoke to them no more. He retired, leaving them to their idle pursuits.
This is it. This is where it's kicking off, people. This is where it's ramping up. We know Sayyid Kazim has passed away. What's been happening in the meantime? Where is Mullah Husayn this whole time? Well, Mullah Husayn, of course, remember, he went to Isfahan. He then went to Mashhad. And Mullah Husayn is now heading back to Karbala because, of course, his task is done. As he heads back to Karbala, he then finds out that Sayyid Kazim has passed away. He's there, he's distraught. There are so many mourners that are coming, but Mullah Husayn is the one who's sort of taking them in, dealing with them and saying it's going to be okay. He then speaks to all the rest of the disciples. And he says, well, what did Sayyid Kazim say? What were his last words? What was he talking about? What was the final thing we're meant to do? They look and they say, well, Sayyid Kazim said that as he's going to die, we should go out, we should scatter far and wide, we should go and look for him, and that's what we should do. Mullah Husayn's like, great, fantastic, so let's get up, let's go. Jinnus, let's go. Jinnus was like, no, I've got to stay and I've got to look after the children. He's like, you what? She's like, okay, fine, Sandra, what about you? Let's go. She's like, well, me and Mariam, actually, we're playing badminton, and we're doing it because we feel it kind of represents the love of God going back. He's like, what are you talking about? What are you talking? We're meant to go and look for the promised one. What are you talking about? And then he asked Payam, he's like, Payam, well, what are you doing? And he says, well, I'm actually doing a deepening class with Khaza Fananapazir. And he says, oh, well, fair enough. You should probably stick and do that because you learn a lot. But no, come on, we're meant to go and search for him. No one seems to be taking this seriously. No one is actually really listening. He then goes to Mirza Gohar and he speaks to Gohar, the slightly large guy, and he says to him, look, this is what you need to do. He goes to Mirza Mohit as well, the very tall one, and he says to them, look, we have to go. Our enemies are big. We must remain powerful. People are trying to attack us. It's incumbent that we get up and we go. Mullah Husayn spoke to them no more. He retired, leaving them to their idle pursuits. I can only imagine how heavy the heart of Mullah Husayn may have been after being in this school with these incredible, incredible teachers with Sheikh Ahmad and Sayyid Kazim. And look what's happening. No one's getting up. No one at all is really getting up. We're going to read a couple more passages. The year 60, as I mentioned previously, refers to the year 1260 in the Islamic calendar, which is the year 1844.
As the year 60, the year that witnessed the birth of the promised revelation, had just dawned upon the world, it would not seem inappropriate at this juncture to digress from our theme and to mention certain traditions of Muhammad and the Imams of the faith, which bear specific reference to that year. Imam Jafar, son of Muhammad, when questioned concerning the year in which the Khayyam was to be made manifest, replied as follows: verily in the year 60 his cause shall be revealed, and his name shall be noised abroad. In the works of the learned and far-famed Muhajjid-i-Arabi, many references are to be found regarding both the year of the Advent and the name of the promised manifestation. Among them are the following: the ministers and upholders of his faith shall be of the people of Persia. In his name, the name of the guardian, Ali, precedeth that of the prophet, Muhammad. The year of his revelation is identical with half of that number, which is divisible by 9, 2520. Mirza Muhammad Akbari, in his poems relating to the year of the manifestation, makes the following prediction. In the year Khaz, the numerical value of the letters of which is 1260, the earth shall be illumined by his light. And in the Kharashe 1265, the world shall be suffused with its glory. If thou livest until the year Kharasi 1270, thou shalt witness how the nations, the rulers, the peoples, and the faith of God shall all have been renewed. In a tradition ascribed to the Imam Ali, the commander of the faithful, it is likewise recorded, in Khaz, the tree of divine guidance shall be planted.
Nabil is completely, he's doing his thing of just jumping to something else. He's like, I know, we'll look at something else. And he starts bringing up different kind of prophecies that were around at the time. And these things about, for example, the year of his revelation will be half of that number, which is divisible by 2,520. A slightly bizarre way you may think of trying to reveal something, but if we take 2,520, we divide it by 2, sure enough, we come to the year 1260. We're almost at our 7:30 at our close. So we're going to draw this session to a close, and we're going to deal with some of these things in our next session of the Dawn Breakers, which will be in 2 days. I'd like to thank you all again for joining. The story really starts to heat up more and more. We're going to go with a declaration of the Bible and learning about Mullah Husayn, and then things start going crazy. It's amazing the links that'll be that's going to be made and everything. So if I could please ask for the prayers to be kicked off now, that'll be amazing. Thank you so much for your patience, guys.
Remember my days, during thy days, my distress and banishment in this remote prison. Remember my days, during thy days, my distress and banishment in this remote prison. And be thou so steadfast in my love, that thy heart shall not waver, even if the swords of the enemy's rain blows upon thee, upon thee. And all the heavens and the earth arise against thee, against thee. And all the heavens and the earth arise against thee, against thee. Remember my days, during thy days, and my distress and banishment in this remote prison. Remember my days, remember my days, remember my days.